I remember the exact moment I realized I had built everything and become nothing. It wasn't dramatic. There was no thunder, no crisis you could point to and name. It was a Tuesday, an ordinary, unremarkable Tuesday. I was sitting at my desk at 11:47 at night, and the room smelled like cold coffee and old ambition, and I had just closed a deal that would have made the version of me from 5 years ago weep with gratitude. And I sat there, and I felt nothing. Not relief, not pride, not even exhaustion. The kind that at least tells you that you fought for something. Just nothing. A clean, vast, terrifying nothing, the way a field looks after everything has been harvested, and all that's left is bare ground and a gray sky that doesn't care what used to grow there. And I remember thinking, this is it? This is what I was running toward. Wait, before you scroll, I need you to stay with me for a minute, because I'm not going to give you a highlight reel. I'm not going to stand here in a fitted shirt with perfect lighting and tell you that you just need to wake up at 5 a.m. and cold plunge your way to enlightenment. I've done all of that. I've optimized every hour of every day. I've read the books, run the protocols, built the systems. I was a machine in a man's clothing, and I want to tell you what that actually costs, because nobody told me, and I paid the price in a currency I didn't even know I was spending. I'm going to tell you about the collapse, and then I'm going to tell you about her. And then I'm going to tell you the thing I learned, the thing that cracked me open and put me back together differently. Stay with me. I built a morning routine before I built a life worth waking up for. I built discipline before I built the capacity to be honest with someone who loved me. I built a brand, a following, a portfolio, a reputation, and a very convincing performance of a man who had it together. While underneath all of it, I was still that kid who learned that love was something you had to earn, something conditional, something that arrived when your grades were good and your behavior was acceptable and your feelings were manageable and quiet and small. That's where it started. You want to understand a man? Don't look at his achievements. Look at what he learned love felt like when he was 7 years old. Because that lesson, that first primal lesson about whether you are loved for what you do or for who you are, becomes the operating system. Everything runs on it. Every relationship, every ambition, every fear, every late night at the desk trying to prove something to a universe that never asked for the proof. I learned early that I was easier to love when I was impressive. So I became impressive. I thought productivity was the same thing as purpose. I thought being useful was the same thing as being present. I thought building something meant I was becoming someone. I thought if I could just get to the next level, the next milestone, the next number, the next version of success, something inside me would finally go quiet. That hungry, restless, never satisfied thing that drove me forward at 4 a.m. and wouldn't let me rest at midnight. I thought success would silence it. I thought achievement would fill the hole. I thought if I could just become enough, I would finally feel like enough. Here's what I learned. The hole doesn't fill from the outside. It never has. It never will. You can pour all the accomplishments in the world into it, money, recognition, status, productivity, performance, and it will swallow every single one and ask for more. Because the hole was never about what you lacked. It was about what you were afraid to face. And the more you achieve, the louder the silence becomes when you stop moving. I stopped being afraid of failure a long time ago. What I was actually afraid of, what I had never admitted to anyone, not even myself, was being known. Truly known. Known in the ordinary, unglamorous, unoptimized places. Known in the doubt. Known in the confusion. Known in the 3 a.m. moments when the performance fell away and there was just a man sitting in the dark, not sure what he was building or why, not sure if any of it actually meant anything. I was afraid that if someone saw that, the real underneath the curated, they would leave. Because that's what love had always felt like. Conditional, contingent, dependent on performance. So I performed. I performed brilliance. I performed certainty. I performed having it together. I performed so convincingly for so long that I started to confuse the performance for the person. I started to lose track of where the mask ended, and I began, tell me something. When was the last time someone asked you how you were? And you told them the truth? Not the managed truth, not the I'm good, just busy truth, the real truth, the I'm terrified, I'm exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. I'm not sure if I'm making the right choices. I'm not sure if the version of me that everyone sees is actually me or just the best possible version I could project onto the wall. That truth, when was the last time you let someone sit with you in the actual weight of what you carry? Or have you been doing what I was doing, believing that showing the weight would make people respect you less, love you less, need you less? Believing that vulnerability is a liability and strength means silence, and real men handle their own problems alone in the dark? Don't deny it.
I know, because I lived inside that belief for years. And it almost took everything. She came into my life quietly.
I want to be very careful about how I tell this part, because she is not a fairy tale. She didn't rescue me. She didn't arrive with some divine ability to heal wounds she didn't create. She was not a fantasy or a symbol or a metaphor. She was a person, complicated, tired, honest, occasionally frustrated with me, occasionally wrong about things, occasionally laughing at something stupid we both said at 2 a.m. She was a real human being who had her own fears and her own history and her own unfinished business with the world. But she did something that undid me. She stayed not because I was impressive, not because I had the right answers, not because my life was together or my numbers were good or my routine was optimized. She stayed through the silence. She stayed through the version of me that didn't know what to say. She stayed through the night. I told her for the first time ever that I wasn't actually okay. She didn't fix it, didn't minimize it, didn't turn it into a problem to be solved. She just sat with me in it, quiet, present, not running, and something in me cracked open that I hadn't even known was closed. Here's what I learned about presence. I had been there physically for years, in rooms and conversations and relationships. My body arrived on time. I returned messages. I showed up to dinners and meetings and all the places a person is supposed to show up. But I was never actually there. I was always planning the next thing, processing the last thing, calculating the optimal move, managing the impression I was making, monitoring the performance. I was like a lighthouse that keeps the light on but never actually sees the ships. Presence is not proximity. You can be in the same bed with someone and be 1,000 miles away. You can sit across the dinner table and be so deep inside your own head, your ambitions, your anxieties, your mental to-do list, the version of yourself you're still trying to become, that the person across from you might as well be eating alone, and eventually they start to feel alone. And eventually that aloneness becomes a kind of quiet grief that neither of you fully names, but both of you feel like a cold draft from a door you forgot to close. She told me once, gently, without accusation, in the way honest people deliver hard truths, she said, I feel like you're always preparing to live, like you're always rehearsing for the life that starts after this moment. But this is the moment. This is already the life. I didn't know how to hear that then. It took me longer than I'm proud of to understand what she meant. I built an empire on my calendar and called it purpose. I built walls around my emotions and called it strength. I built distance from the people who loved me most and called it independence. I built a version of myself that the world could admire and called it identity. And one day it all stood there, the calendar, the walls, the distance, the performance. And I looked at it and I thought, this is not a home. This is a monument to avoiding something. The collapse, when it finally came, didn't look like what I expected. It wasn't loud. It was just that Tuesday night with the cold coffee and the closed deal and the silence that had no bottom. And sitting in that silence, I understood, really understood, maybe for the first time, that I had optimized myself right out of my own life. That in trying to become the best version of a man, I had forgotten to just be the man. That in building everything for tomorrow, I had missed every single today. And here's the mercy in that. The thing I couldn't see until later, the collapse was the invitation, not punishment. Invitation. The emptiness wasn't the end. It was the room being cleared for something real. Look at me for a second. You know what I'm talking about. I can feel it. You've had that moment, maybe not the same shape, but the same texture. That moment when you achieved the thing and felt nothing, or when someone reached for you and you pulled back without knowing why, or when you were in the middle of something that looked beautiful from the outside and felt hollow from the inside, or when you caught yourself performing happiness, genuinely performing it, manufacturing it for an audience that included yourself. Because the real feeling underneath was too complicated or too raw or too honest to let live. You've been there. The question is what you did with it. Because most of us do not stop in that moment. We interpret the emptiness as a calibration problem, not a direction problem. We think, I just haven't achieved enough yet. I just haven't optimized correctly. I just need another system, another morning, another goal. And we run harder. And the emptiness runs with us step for step because it was never about the destination. It was about the man refusing to look inward and instead keep looking forward. I did that for years. I thought momentum was the answer to everything. Keep moving, don't stop, don't look, don't feel, just build, just achieve, just perform. Here's what I learned about fear. The most sophisticated fear doesn't look like fear. It looks like ambition. It looks like discipline. It looks like a man who has his life together, who never asks for help, who always has an answer, who is always 5 steps ahead of the problem, who never lets you see him sweat. It looks impressive. It looks strong. It looks like the exact kind of man people hold up as an example. But underneath it, underneath all of it, is a child who learned that being seen in his softness was dangerous, that showing uncertainty invited abandonment, that needing something from someone gave them power over you, and power given could be taken, and being taken from was the worst thing in the world. I had been running from that child my entire adult life, outrunning him with achievement, drowning him out with productivity, dressing him up in success and hoping no one would look too closely. She looked, and she didn't run. And something in me, some ancient, defended, exhausted thing, started to consider the possibility that maybe being known was not the same as being destroyed. That maybe there was a kind of love in the world that didn't require performance as its entry fee. That maybe I had been fighting a war that had ended decades ago and I just hadn't received the news The rebuilding didn't happen the way I thought it would. I thought transformation was a moment, a revelation, a single conversation or a single breakdown or a single sunrise where everything shifted and you woke up different. That's how it looks in the movies. That's how we sell it in the highlight reel. The before, the after, the clean line between them. Real transformation is a practice. It's Tuesday morning and choosing to put the phone down and actually look at the person across from you. It's the moment you notice yourself starting to perform, starting to reach for the impressive answer instead of the honest one, and you choose the honesty, even though the honesty is messier and less impressive and doesn't land the same way. It's sitting in discomfort without immediately reaching for productivity as an escape. It's letting yourself not know something. It's saying I don't have it together right now and watching the world not end. It's small. It is almost embarrassingly small. There's no drama in it, no cinematic score, no single moment you can frame and put on the wall. But it compounds. Just like every other discipline you've ever practiced, it compounds. Day by day, choice by choice, honest conversation by honest conversation. And slowly the foundation shifts. Not the walls, not the roof, the foundation. And a house built on a real foundation feels different from the inside. It feels safer, it feels quieter, it feels for the first time like somewhere you can actually live. I want to talk about the altar for a moment because I think most high-performing men are building altars without knowing it. They think they're building homes. They think they're building lives. But what they're actually building is a place of sacrifice, where they sacrifice presence for productivity, connection for achievement, authenticity for performance, rest for relentlessness. And they kneel at that altar every day and call it dedication. I knelt at that altar for a long time. And the terrible thing about an altar is that it always wants more. It is never satisfied. There is always another offering required, always another sacrifice asked for, always another version of yourself that needs to be surrendered in pursuit of the next level. And you give it, because the alternative, stepping back from the altar, looking at what you've given, asking whether any of this is actually serving you, feels like weakness, feels like quitting, feels like betrayal of some promise you made to yourself or some standard you set or some version of success that someone else defined and you adopted without question. The bravest thing I ever did was step back from the altar, not give up, not surrender to mediocrity, step back, look at what I had been building, ask, is this actually what I want? Is this who I actually am? Is this the kind of man I would actually choose to be if the fear were removed? And the answer that came back, quiet, uncomfortable, undeniable, was no, not entirely, not honestly. Here's what I learned about love, not romantic love specifically, all love, the whole landscape of it, what it feels like to give it without transaction, what it feels like to receive it without suspicion, what it means to actually share yourself, not the curated version, not the impressive version, not the version that has it together, but the actual self, the confused, still figuring it out, occasionally petty, sometimes afraid, genuinely trying, imperfectly present, real self. I don't share what I love easily. I never have. There is a part of me that guards the things that matter most, protects them, keeps them private, refuses to expose them to the possibility of being diminished or misunderstood or taken lightly. I guard my real opinions. I guard my real fears. I guard the things that move me, the things that break me open, the things that I would call sacred if I let myself use that word. I guard them because I learned somewhere back in the beginning, in the years when the world was first teaching me its rules, I learned that the things you love most are the things that can be used against you. That showing what matters to you is handing someone the blueprint of how to hurt you. That loving something openly is a kind of risk, and risk is a kind of weakness, and weakness is the one thing a man is not supposed to be. So I didn't share, and I didn't share you. I held you back from the world the way I held everything precious back, protected, guarded, kept behind glass. Not because you weren't worth sharing, because I was afraid of what it meant that I loved you the way I did, afraid of what it revealed about me, afraid that loving you that completely would mean that losing you would break something that couldn't be repaired. So the question I've been sitting with, the one that keeps finding me in quiet moments, is if I don't share the things I love, what does that say about how I relate to love itself? Don't deny it, you've done this too. Protected what matters most by pretending it matters less. Downgraded your own love to make it portable, manageable, less exposed. Said, I'm fine with whatever when you weren't fine with whatever. Walked away from conversations that were getting too real, too honest, too close to the actual thing. Kept the door open just enough to call it a relationship and closed just enough to call it safe. We do it with people. We do it with dreams. We do it with the parts of ourselves we're most uncertain about. The creative part, the tender part, the part that wants something beautiful and is afraid to want it out loud because wanting out loud makes the wanting visible, and visible means vulnerable, and vulnerable is, what, dangerous, weak, embarrassing? When did we decide that wanting things deeply was something to be ashamed of? When did we decide that caring too much was a character flaw? When did we build a world where the man who loves deeply and says so is considered naive, and the man who keeps everyone at arm's length is considered sophisticated? I don't want that sophistication anymore. I'm done being sophisticated about the things that matter. She taught me something about generosity that I couldn't have learned any other way. She gave generously. Not just things, time, attention, patience, honesty, humor. She gave the kind of presence that doesn't calculate what it's getting in return. She gave her actual self to conversations that had no agenda. She laughed at things that genuinely struck her as funny without checking whether the laugh was appropriate. She cried sometimes at things that moved her without apologizing for the tears. She disagreed with me clearly, without theater, without cruelty, without the need to win. Just, I see it differently, here's why, and I'm still here. She was not performing. And being around someone who is not performing has a disorienting, beautiful effect. It makes the performance exhausting in a way it wasn't before. Because you can feel the contrast now, you can feel the difference between connecting and performing, and once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. The performance starts to chafe, the mask starts to weigh something, and you start to wonder what it would feel like to just put it down and let someone see your face. I started putting it down, slowly, imperfectly, with setbacks and relapses and moments of reaching back for the armor because the armor felt safer, but I kept putting it down, and she kept staying. Here's what I learned about the foundation. Everything I had built before was built on the need to prove something, prove I was smart enough, capable enough, successful enough, worth the space I was taking up. Everything was constructed on that base, the need for external confirmation that I was in fact enough. And that is a foundation made of sand. It looks solid from above, it photographs well, but it cannot hold the weight of an actual life, because an actual life includes failure and rest, and ordinary days, and grief and confusion, and not knowing, and all the other things that have no place in a highlight reel. A real foundation is built on knowing who you are when no one is watching, on choices you make not because they're impressive, but because they're true, on the willingness to disappoint people rather than betray yourself, on the understanding that your worth is not a performance review, not a number, not a ranking, not a metric, not a milestone. It just is. It was there before the achievement, and it will be there after. And no amount of building on top of it makes it more real, and no failure beneath it makes it less. That took me years to understand, years of building and collapsing and rebuilding, and finally sitting down and asking, what is this actually for? Who is this actually for? What kind of life do I actually want to live? Not the life that looks impressive, the life that feels true. I want to tell you about a morning, not a landmark morning, not the morning everything changed, because again, that's not how it works. Just a morning about 6 months into the slow, unglamorous work of becoming more honest with myself. I woke up early, not because of an alarm, not because of a schedule, but because the light was doing something extraordinary outside the window. That particular winter light, pale gold, coming in at an angle that made everything in the room look like it was made of something softer than it usually is. And she was still asleep. And I just watched for maybe 10 minutes. Not thinking about the day, not planning, not optimizing, just present, just there. Just watching the light and listening to her breathe and feeling in a way I hadn't felt in longer than I could calculate, genuinely, quietly, unexpectedly grateful. Not for the achievement, not for the success, for this, for the light and the breathing and the particular morning and the privilege of being awake in it. And I thought, oh, this is what I was missing. This is the thing that was missing from every milestone. This presence, ordinary, unremarkable, irreplaceable presence. Look at me for a second. The empire you're building, the one you're running yourself into the ground for, the one you're sacrificing your mornings and your evenings and your attention and your presence for. Ask yourself honestly, who is it for and what are you building it in place of? Because sometimes the empire is a substitute. Sometimes the relentless ambition, the 4 a.m. alarm, the obsessive optimization. Sometimes it's not vision. Sometimes it's avoidance dressed up as discipline. Sometimes the most impressive looking people are the most frightened, and the most productive people are the most skilled at staying in motion so they never have to feel what happens when they stop. I'm not telling you to stop building. I'm telling you to know why you're building, and I'm telling you that the most important thing you will ever construct is not a business or a brand or a portfolio. It is a self, an actual, honest, present, integrated self that can sit in a room with someone they love and be fully there. A self that can receive love without suspicion. A self that can give love without transaction. A self that knows the difference between the performance and the person and has chosen deliberately to be the person. That is the building that lasts. That is the only foundation that can hold the weight of a real life. I built a life that looked like success and felt like a prison. I thought the prison was circumstance. I thought when I achieve this, I'll be free. When I reach this level, the weight will lift. When I finally become the man I'm supposed to become, I'll be able to rest. Here's what I learned. The prison was the thought that I needed to become something other than I already was in order to deserve love. The prison was conditional self-acceptance. The prison was the belief that the real me, unpolished, uncertain, sometimes afraid, not always impressive, was not enough on his own, that he needed to be improved, optimized, upgraded, and then maybe, perhaps conditionally, he could be worthy of being known. She showed me the door of the prison. She showed me not by telling me I was already enough. People tell you that all the time and it doesn't land the same way. But by loving the version of me that I was most ashamed of. Not the brilliant version, not the productive version, the quiet Tuesday night version, the I don't know what I'm doing version, the I'm scared and I don't know how to ask for help version. She loved that version just as steadily as she loved the impressive version, and slowly, incredibly slowly, with a lot of stumbling and backsliding and moments of reverting to the armor, I started to believe her. The transformation, when I look back at it, is not a dramatic arc. It's 1,000 tiny choices in the direction of honesty, 1,000 moments of choosing presence over performance, 1,000 small acts of letting someone in instead of managing the impression. Choosing to say I don't know instead of reaching for the answer. Choosing to say I miss you instead of pretending I don't need anything from anyone. Choosing to sit in a feeling instead of converting it immediately into a goal or a plan or a to-do item. Small, so small, but here's what those small choices do over time. They change what home feels like. They change what rest feels like. They change what love feels like. From a conditional reward structure to an actual dwelling, a place you live in rather than audition for, and they change what you reach for when you're building. Because you start building from a different place, not from the wound that needs to be covered over, from the ground that actually holds you. And what you build from that place has a completely different quality. It's not frantic. It's not driven by the need to prove. It's not a monument or an altar or an empire designed to impress an audience that includes the unhealed parts of yourself. It's a home. And a home is built for living in, for being present in, for welcoming people into and letting them see the actual walls and the actual light and the actual mess of a life being genuinely lived. I don't share what I love easily. I'm still that man in some ways. There's still a guard, still a part of me that holds the most precious things carefully, that doesn't display them for casual consumption, that wants to protect what matters most from being diminished. But I've learned the difference between protection and withholding. I've learned the difference between being private and being armored. I've learned that there are people in the world who will hold what you offer them carefully, not perfectly, not without ever dropping it, but with genuine care. And those people deserve to know you. They deserve the version of you that exists before the performance begins. She deserved that version of me, and I almost didn't give it to her. I almost loved her at arm's length for the rest of my life, managing the distance, keeping it safe, never quite letting her arrive at the real place. Because I was afraid of what complete arrival would feel like, afraid it would undo me, afraid the intimacy would expose something I couldn't unsee. It did undo me, and what was underneath, what was exposed, was not the shameful thing I feared. It was something quieter and more ordinary and somehow more beautiful than anything I had built in all the years of building. It was just a man, an ordinary, sometimes confused, genuinely trying and perfectly loving man, with no altar, no empire, no performance, just a man. And somehow that was enough. Tell me something. What are you protecting by keeping people at a distance? What are you afraid will happen if someone sees you without the armor? What would it cost you, genuinely actually cost you, to let one person, one real person in your life see the Tuesday night version, the 3 a.m. version, the I don't have it together version, not everyone, not the world, one person, the one who has been offering you their honesty and their presence and their patience while you manage the distance, the one who stays, the one who doesn't need you to be impressive, the one who, if you're honest, already sees through the performance and is still there. What would it cost you to meet them there? Because I can tell you what it cost me to keep them out. Years. A version of myself I can never get back. Mornings I was present for but never actually in. Connections I allowed to remain surface level because depth felt dangerous. A kind of loneliness that is particular to people who are never alone, surrounded by people, seen by no one. That loneliness is expensive. More expensive than the vulnerability you've been avoiding. Here's what I know now. The collapse was not the worst thing that happened to me. It was the best thing. Because the empire I was building could not have held a real life. It was built on the wrong foundation, on fear instead of truth, on performance instead of presence, on the belief that I had to earn my place in the world every single day or risk losing it. That empire was never going to become a home. The collapse was the mercy of the universe refusing to let me live in a beautiful prison forever. The emptiness of that Tuesday night was not failure. It was the clearing of the ground. It was the space being made, the noise being reduced, the performance finally going quiet long enough for something real to speak. And what spoke was small and honest and not impressive at all. It said, you don't have to earn this. You never had to earn this. The love that requires the performance was never the love you needed. The rest, the real rest, the kind that restores instead of just postponing exhaustion, is available to you. The presence is available, the connection is available, the home is available, but you have to choose it. You have to choose it over the empire, over the altar, over the armor, over the convincing performance of a man who has it all together. You have to choose to be known. I'm choosing it imperfectly, inconsistently, with days where the armor goes back on and the performance comes back out, and I catch myself managing the impression again. I'm not cured of the wound. I'm in relationship with it now, which is different. I can see it when it's running the show. I can name it. And naming it, even to myself, even alone in the car at a red light, naming it reduces its power. She didn't heal me. She didn't fix me. She didn't save me. She stayed. And her staying gave me the time to do the work myself. Her presence gave me the safety to look at the things I'd been running from. Her honesty gave me a model for what it looks like to just be a person without the performance. Her love, steady, patient, imperfect, real, gave me the evidence I needed to start challenging the story I'd been telling myself since I was 7 years old. The story that said, love is conditional, you have to earn it, the real you is not enough. That story is a lie. It was always a lie. It just took a collapse and an ordinary woman in extraordinary light and 1,000 small choices in the direction of honesty to show me what was true instead. Look at me for a second. I don't know what you're carrying. I don't know what your version of the performance looks like or what altar you're kneeling at or what it would feel like for you to step back from it and look at the real ground beneath your feet. I don't know who in your life is offering you presents that you're keeping at a careful distance. I don't know what you're protecting or what you're afraid of or what story from a long time ago is still running in the background of every relationship you've ever had. But I know this. The life that is available to you, the real one, the present one, the one built on honest ground with the actual you at its center, that life is worth more than everything you've built to avoid it. The person who loves you enough to stay through the real version of you deserves to actually meet them. And you, the real you, the one underneath the achieving and the performing and the optimizing, you deserve to be known, not for what you've built, not for what you've proven, not for the version of yourself that photographs well and performs on command and never shows the doubt. For you, just you. Ordinary, imperfect, still figuring it out, genuinely trying you, that person has always been enough. And the fact that you don't fully believe that yet, the fact that there's a part of you that read that sentence and felt resistance, felt the urge to argue, felt the familiar pull toward, but I need to be more, do more, prove more, that's exactly where the work is. That's exactly where the life is. I don't share what I love easily, but I'm learning, and what I've learned, what I'm still learning, what I will probably spend the rest of my life learning, is that the things most worth sharing are the things that feel most risky to share. The honest doubt, the real fear, the genuine love, given without armor, received without suspicion. The ordinary Tuesday morning with the pale gold light and the breathing and the gratitude that has no achievement attached to it. The small, unglamorous, irreplaceable truth of an actual life, actually lived, actually present. That is the only empire worth building. And it starts not with a system or a routine or a discipline, though those things have their place. It starts with a choice. A single, terrifying, life-changing choice to be known, to stop performing and start living, to put down the armor and trust that what's underneath it, the real, unoptimized, unconditional you, is not something that needs to be fixed before it can be loved. It is already lovable. It always was. Go find your person, the one who stays, the one who sees through the performance and is still there, the one who doesn't need you to be impressive. Go find them and give them something real. Not the highlight reel, not the managed version, something real. And if you can't find anyone like that yet, start with yourself. Look at yourself the way someone who loved you completely would look at you. With patience. With honesty, with the understanding that the work of becoming is not the same as the work of earning, that you are not a project, that you are not a problem to be optimized, that the person you are right now, in this moment, before the next achievement, before the next level, before the next version of success, that person is worthy of being known. Start there, build from there, and this time, build a home, because here's the last thing I want to say. The day will come, maybe it already has, when you will sit in a room that you worked very hard to be in, and you will have achieved something you worked very hard to achieve, and you will feel it. That silence with no bottom, that hollow where the feeling was supposed to be. And in that moment, you will have a choice. You can interpret it as a problem and run harder, or you can sit with it. Let it speak. Let the emptiness tell you what it's been trying to tell you through every milestone you ran past, every connection you managed instead of made, every night you spent optimizing when you should have been present. Let it say what it needs to say. And when it speaks, listen, because what it has been trying to tell you all this time, in every hollow moment, in every performance that felt more exhausting than satisfying, In every relationship, you kept at a careful distance. In every morning, you were physically present but emotionally somewhere else. What it has been trying to tell you is not that you haven't done enough. It's that you haven't been here. Come back to the people who love you. Come back to the life that's happening right now in this unremarkable, extraordinary, ordinary, irreplaceable moment. Come back to yourself. That is the whole thing. That has always been the whole thing.